All right. So for the person that's never done a poster before, or an abstract for that matter, what does a poster look like? What goes into making a poster? What are the elements?
That's a great question. And I'd like to share an image of a poster real quick. So let me try to do this. So this is your general poster format. And I picked this one because it's laid out pretty neatly. And so you can kind of see everything. Up at the top, you're going to have your title. Then I've got it blacked out to protect the innocent parties who maybe didn't want to share this. But you're going to have your names right under there, then your affiliations.
So I just want to interrupt you there for a second because it
Yeah.
says the title of this poster that you're using as an example is the evaluation of pre-hospital pelvic binder usage in U.S. military casualties with pelvic fractures. And I wanted to point out that most of the time when you're presenting a poster, the title is really important because that's the first thing that anybody reads. And the title should actually describe the content of the poster. Is that sort of universally thought, or is that just my personal bias?
No, I think that's a really good best practice, is that it should represent the content in there. It should draw people in, and it could even tell you kind of what the results are going to be based upon the title. If you've got something that you found makes a difference, go ahead and say that in the title. Like, for instance, on this one, it could have been rewritten, pelvic binders saves lives in U.S. casualties with pelvic fractures. It could have been something like that. So that's a really good point. The next thing that you're going to find is this is basically your abstract. So this is the abstract from the research that you've done. So you're going to have your introduction, you might have an objectives, you'll have your methods, your results, and then either a discussion with limitations and some final conclusions. The last thing that you'll have that you don't necessarily put in your abstract is any type of acknowledgement or references to what people that helped you with this research, or maybe people that contributed significantly. So in this case, it was the people of the DoD Trauma Registry for providing extra information and things like that for this study. So those are the main parts of the abstract and the poster, if you will.
So I agree. I think this was a great example of a poster because if you go down through all the various pieces, what I like to see in a good poster is that it's not a bunch of paragraphs. So you said this is the abstract, but it's not really the abstract, right? It's a visual representation. So I always enjoy seeing a bulleted type format and something that is just super easy to read when you're standing, 5 or 6 feet away.
Exactly. Yeah. There's some really important parts of a poster to make it visually appealing. And you kind of hit on that. One is less text is probably better. If you can say something with 5 words, don't use 50 words to say the exact same thing. You want it to be quick and easy for people to read. Most people are probably going to spend about 2 to 3 minutes reading your poster. Depending upon how they do the poster sessions, you'll have a 5-minute maybe presentation. So you really need to be able to get all of the information that you want to get out there in about 3 to 5 minutes, whether that's reading or speaking about it. So less is more. And we can talk about more of what makes a really good poster presentation if you want, whenever you want to do that.
Give me a couple of hints on how do you make data, data, boring data. How do you make that fun and visually appealing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's hard to do, right? So that's where design is going to come in to a lot of this. Because if you have a really interesting poster, but it's very poorly designed, nobody's going to look at it. Coincidentally, if you have maybe not the most interesting thing, but you have a laid out poster that is visually appealing, it's going to catch people and they're going to kind of be interested in it. So I think what's done on this one is they've used some pictures that are tangentially related to the topic, and that kind of catches the eye and brings people in. So that's one way to do it. You want to have about 50 to 50 pictures and graphics to words. So easily kind of digestible graphics are better, so that you can kind of look at it and understand exactly what's going on just by looking at the graphic, and you don't have to really dig down too much into it, is important, because that's what most people are going to start looking at. I know it's not the way you should do things, but the reality is that's just kind of how people are wired. They're wired to the things that are going to look good. So they're going to look at the pictures, they're going to look at the graphs. So including things like that. The other important thing is the color palette. So you want to have something that makes sense with your unit or your organization. So a color palette that's about 3 to 5 colors and kind of related to like maybe your logo. You'll notice that they include a couple logos up in the corners of this this poster. You know, ours from UT, we include a couple logos. UT is kind of an orange type logo, so we usually include something that's either orange or something that balances it well with like a blue, and we can show some examples of that. This is a good example of kind of using that orange color scheme for your poster presentation. So you notice that it's a UT, and kind of all the headers are kind of orange and kind of laid out as such. Here's another one that's for the Department of Defense. You notice they have a blue logo, so we kind of went with a light blue logo that also kind of matches the NREMT logo down at the left-hand bottom. All right, I wanted to go back real quick and just run through a couple of these posters. I think this will kind of deal with a lot of the questions that we have about what makes a good poster or not. So this is actually the guy at the bottom, Colin Pergington. I think he'd be okay with us sharing this because he actually posted this online as an example of a horrendous poster. What you'll notice is that it's mostly text. It's kind of scattered all over the place. There's no real consistent color theme. He bounces around like crazy. And then the photo down at the bottom is a guinea pig on a scale, which really is kind of, it's a little bit nauseating to look at. It's kind of like, it took me a while to figure out what's going on with that scale down there. So
I still haven't figured it out.
I know. This is an example of a fairly bad poster. And again, it was made specifically to be bad, but you'll also notice that the text kind of jumps around in sizes, and I think he changes the font somewhere in there. So this is not what you would expect from a professional level. Again, you're trying to convey your research in a professional setting. These conferences, you've got people from all over. It's a great networking chance. People are going to look at your poster and they're going to make some instant judgments about how much you cared about the subject and how much detail you spent on it. So I've got a couple more to look at. So this one is, I did not blind his name. I blinded all the other names. This one's from you, Dave, actually.
And one of my favorite posters ever.
Yes. And so what happened in this poster was, I think, a keynote to PowerPoint transfer of data. Now, I don't think that this poster was ever actually published. At least I hope not. I hope you look at it before you actually printed something like this. But what you can see is that things just got messed up and jumbled up. So you would never want to print this. And the point there is double check your poster. This is pretty obvious, all the mistakes that kind of happen from the transfer. But there might be some subtle mistakes that you want to catch before you actually print it. Because the last thing you want to do is print something, roll it up, travel all the way to San Diego, unroll it, and then say, oh man, I just realized that half of this sentence is cut off at the bottom.
Almost every poster that I've ever sent to print, the minute I get it back, I'm like, oh, I didn't spell that right. Almost every one.
So we looked at this one real quick as far as like the orange. But the other thing on this one is you'll notice that there's a couple different colors that kind of jump out at you. The blue, the red, the yellow. That works out pretty good because it has a theme and it's tied to the other colors down at the left-hand bottom. But if you could probably avoid something like that, that would be better. so that you just kind of keep it with a little bit more solid on the orange color. And then you'll notice that the orange that's right in the middle, it kind of changes colors a little bit too. I know that's to kind of separate out the rows and the columns, but it does kind of give this a little bit too much for the eye to look at. The other thing that I really wanted to show out here, and we talked about, the text and stuff, but you also have to use your negative space well. This is where feng shui comes in. This is a very unbalanced poster. Sorry, Dave. If you look, it's really heavy on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of the poster. Left as you're looking at it, right of the poster. And then on the left or left of the poster, right hand while you're looking at it, there's a lot of negative space. There's a lot of white space that you don't have on the other side. So it's kind of unbalanced there. Also look at these, like the very top, if you look at the results, and I believe it's the introduction, you'll notice that those bars are different widths. That's just kind of the fine details. Again, this is a professional representation of how much care you took with your research. So make sure that if you do have headers like this, that everything's about the same size. Everything's lined up and makes sense, that you're not having one section that's, maybe just a 3 or 4 lines above the other when you could very easily just line it up. All right. This one, I believe, was from me. What I wanted to point out here was I tried to match the orange in that little chart in the center, and I did a pretty decent job, but I didn't do the next step, which is if you look at kind of the fade on the titles, on the headers, is darker to lighter, and then on the chart, I did the exact opposite. And when I'm looking at this, that just lets me know that, I just didn't take nearly as much time to actually go and switch that away. I tried to include a little bit of balancing so that I got as much white and negative space on the left-hand side as I did the right-hand side. I kind of wanted to really highlight something on the left as you're looking at the poster. So if you look under the introduction, there's a bold where I did the objective so that it kind of draws your eye to that. I'm not saying that that's the best, but it's a technique that you might want to consider using. If there's something that's really important, go ahead and bold it, make it stand out a little bit. And then one thing that I did here that I wish I had done differently in the future is when you have these things on PowerPoint, the pictures look great, but then you blow it up. And I can tell you that when I blew this one up and actually printed it on the 4x6 paper, the pictures were not nearly as crisp and as sharp as I thought they were. And I just stole these from the internet, and they're tangentially related to what the topic is. But if you can take your own photos with a high quality digital camera, that's probably better than anything. And of course, if you've got pictures in there of people, make sure you get their permission to kind of present their face on the poster. And, if your organization has a very specific way to do that, make sure that they sign those releases.